What happens when one of America's most savage talk show hosts decides to go head-to-head with a royal who has spent the last few years trying to escape his past? What you are about to hear is not just an interview. It is a moment that shook the world and had millions glued to their screens. Prince Harry, a man who once wore a crown and a uniform, walked into a studio expecting a casual chat about his new book. Instead, he found himself sitting across from Bill Maher, a host known for pulling no punches and never backing down from uncomfortable questions. What followed was brutal, raw, unfiltered. In the span of one interview, Harry's confidence crumbled. His words failed him, and by the end he was left in tears. Not tears of emotion from a heartfelt memory. These were the tears of a man who had been completely dismantled by cold, relentless truth. The internet lit up. Clips went viral within minutes. People did not just watch, they reacted. They analyzed every word, every pause, every look, because this was not just television. This was something deeper, something real. So before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment down below. This story is not just surprising, it is unforgettable, and it only gets more intense from here. The studio lights were blazing hot, like always. As Prince Harry stepped onto the set of Real Time, the audience burst into warm applause. He smiled, gave a little wave, and walked across the stage with that relaxed California chic vibe he has adopted lately. Casual blazer, clean jeans, the look of someone who has traded royal palaces for coastal comfort. He looked confident, calm, like a man ready to talk about his book, maybe laugh a little, clear up some rumors, and move on. He took his seat across from Bill Maher, nodding politely as the cheers died down. A polite handshake, a quick thanks for having me. On the surface, everything felt light, but there was something in Bill Maher's eyes. That signature smirk was already there, the kind of look that says, you have no idea what is coming. Longtime viewers knew it well. It was the look he gave just before the conversation took a sharp turn, before the real questions started. "Welcome to Real Time, Your Royal Highness," Bill said, leaning back in his chair. "Or is it just Harry now? I can never keep up with the etiquette when someone walks away from royalty." The audience chuckled, just a little. Harry shifted slightly in his seat, the smile on his face tightening for a brief second. "Just Harry is fine," he replied. "Thanks for having me on." "Oh, the pleasure is all mine," Bill said, voice smooth as ever. "Been looking forward to this chat ever since your book came out. Spare, right? Interesting title." And just like that, the tone started to shift. The light welcome was over. The calm was fading. You could almost feel it in the air, like a quiet rumble before a thunderstorm. Harry sat a little straighter. Bill leaned in a little closer. The stage was set. The storm was coming. Bill leaned in a little closer, his eyes locked on Harry's. His voice got quieter, but somehow even sharper. "Let me ask you something," he said. "When did we stop talking about the truth and start calling it your truth?" Harry blinked. He looked confused for a second, like he did not expect that turn. "I mean," Bill continued, "what does that even mean? Your truth? Like we all get to have our own version of facts now." Harry straightened up in his seat. His tone was calm, but his posture gave him away. "It means being honest about your experience," he said. "Everyone's life is different. Everyone sees things through their own lens." Bill raised an eyebrow. "Sure, people have their perspectives, but the idea that every opinion is truth, that every feeling becomes fact, that is where things start to fall apart." The audience stayed quiet. Everyone was watching closely now. Harry tried to shift the focus. "There has been so much misinformation," he said, "for years. This was my chance to tell my side of things." Bill nodded slowly. "And your side happens to come with a publishing deal, a Netflix series, and millions of dollars. Funny how truth always seems to show up with a paycheck." Lately, Harry looked down for a beat. That one stung. "You grew up with everything," Bill said. "We are talking about castles, drivers, guards. Every door in the world opened for you. But instead of recognizing that, you tell a story about suffering that does not sit right with a lot of people." Harry looked up. "You do not know what it is like to grow up in that world." "You are right," Bill said quickly. "I do not. I grew up in Jersey. My parents worked regular jobs. We did not have private chefs or palaces. But you know what we also did not have? The nerve to go on national television and cry about how hard it was." The silence in the studio was heavy. No laughs this time. Just a quiet, rising tension that made everyone lean in. Harry opened his mouth, then closed it again. He looked like he was trying to find the right words, but nothing came out fast enough. Bill leaned back slightly. "This is not about pain, it is about perspective. You want to share your journey, fine, but maybe check the mirror first. Because from where a lot of people are sitting, it just looks like you are complaining about a life they would give anything to live." Bill's tone shifted again, just a little colder this time. He sat back in his chair, tapped the book cover with his fingers, and looked straight at Harry. "Let me just walk through this," he said. "You were born into royalty. Real royalty. Actual castles, staff, guards, the best food, the best schools, millions of people watching your every move. And somehow, you are the one who needs healing." Harry tried to stay calm, but his fingers started tapping on the armrest. He forced a smile, but it barely held. "It is not about what I had," he said. "It is about what I lived through. The pressure, the lack of freedom, the expectations." Bill leaned forward. "That pressure, the one that comes with having every opportunity in the world." The crowd stayed quiet. Nobody laughed. It was one of those moments where you could feel people holding their breath. Harry kept his voice low. "You have not lived in that environment. You do not know what it does to you mentally." "You are right," Bill said. "I did not grow up in a palace. I grew up in New Jersey. My parents worked. I had chores. I paid off student loans. I did not have a crown, but I also did not complain about how tough it was in front of millions of people." Harry looked down for a second. He took a breath. His voice cracked a little. "It is not complaining. It is sharing. It is about growth." Bill nodded. "Sure, and maybe I would believe that if it had stayed private, but you made it public. You turned it into a global therapy tour, a book, a Netflix show, a podcast." Then came the line that hit like a punch to the gut. "This feels less like healing," Bill said, "and more like the most expensive therapy session in history. Only instead of keeping it between you and a doctor, you brought cameras." The audience went dead silent. Harry's jaw tightened. He looked toward the side of the stage, just briefly, as if searching for someone to step in, but no one did. The camera zoomed in, catching every small detail. The red in Harry's cheeks, the way his hands were clenched, the flicker in his eyes that showed the storm building inside. He tried again. "I wrote this book to speak honestly, to explain what really happened. And that is fine," Bill said. "Except what you are calling honesty, a lot of people see as betrayal, not just of your family, but of the role you were given. You were born into a position most people can only dream of. And now you are on TV talking about how hard that was." Harry sat quietly. He did not interrupt. He did not argue. He just stared at the floor for a moment, and for the first time since the interview began, he looked like he wished he was anywhere else. Harry tried to keep his voice steady, but it was clear something had shifted. His shoulders stiffened, his jaw clenched tighter with every word Bill spoke. What started as a calm conversation was now a slow unraveling. You could see it in the way Harry's fingers dug into the armrests, like he was bracing for impact. Bill saw the crack and went right for it. "Let us talk about fair," he said. "Was it fair to your brother William to publish private conversations between you two? Was it fair to your father, who had just lost his wife, to include his pain in your story without his consent?" Harry's eyes were blinking faster now. His lips pressed into a tight line. He looked like he wanted to say something, but his mouth stayed shut. "And what about Camilla?" Bill continued. "You made her out to be some sort of cold-hearted villain, the woman who has been part of your family for decades, the woman who, by all accounts, tried to support you and Meghan. Was that fair?" Harry swallowed hard. His face had turned red, not the flushed kind from stage lights, but the kind that comes from holding back something deeper. Embarrassment, anger, maybe both. The studio felt frozen in time. No laughter, no coughs. Even the camera crew stopped moving. "I needed to tell the truth," Harry said softly, but there was less power in his voice now, less certainty. "Your truth again?" Bill asked. "Because to the rest of us, it just looks like revenge. You are not just sharing your story. You are tearing others down along the way. Your own family." Harry looked toward the floor. His grip on the chair tightened even more. His shoulders rose and fell with every heavy breath. You could see his eyes start to shine, not from the lights, but from something building up behind them, tears. That man who walked in proud, polished, and ready to promote his message was now sitting in silence, blinking back emotion. Bill watched it happen in real time. He did not smile. He did not gloat. He just kept going, calm and steady, knowing exactly what he was doing. This was no longer a debate. It was the slow, quiet collapse of a man who was not ready for what he walked into. Bill leaned forward again, resting his elbows on the edge of his desk. His voice dropped lower, but it cut even deeper now. "You keep saying this is about healing," he said. "But what does healing really look like? Because to most people, healing means therapy, private conversations, growth that happens away from cameras." Harry sat frozen. His eyes were glassy, his breathing had changed. He was trying to hold it together, but you could see the cracks spreading. Bill tapped the book sitting on his desk, flipping it open to a bookmarked page. "You wrote about your father crying when he told you about your mother's death. That is in here. So is a fight with your brother. You even included the moment you lost your virginity in a field behind a pub. How is that healing?" Harry looked down. He rubbed his hands together. His lips were moving slightly, like he was repeating something to himself just to stay calm. Bill did not stop. "Do you really think that is what your mother would have wanted? For you to spill every private detail to the world, not just your pain, but everyone else's too?" Harry's jaw tightened. A single tear slid down his cheek. "You say you want peace," Bill continued, "but every move you make looks like war, not with your enemies, with your own blood." The audience stayed completely still. No one clapped. No one even breathed too loudly. Harry opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. His throat tightened, and his hand went up to wipe his face. Bill watched it all quietly for a second. "Real healing," he said, "is quiet. Real healing does not come with a Netflix deal. It does not need a camera crew or a bestseller. It just needs honesty. And if this is your version of honesty, then maybe you are not trying to heal at all. Harry closed his eyes. His face turned red. His whole body seemed smaller now, like he had shrunk into himself. This was no longer a prince defending a book. This was a man being pulled apart in front of millions, and for the first time since the interview started, even the audience looked unsure if they wanted to keep watching. Harry finally spoke again, but his voice was barely there. It cracked in the middle, like something inside him had just snapped. "I lost my mother when I was 12 years old, he said, wiping at his face with the back of his hand. "Everything I do now is to protect my family, to honor her memory." Bill paused. He let that moment hang in the air just long enough for everyone to feel it. Then he leaned in. "There it is," he said. "The mother card." Harry flinched, but Bill did not stop. "Every time someone challenges you, every time your story starts to fall apart, you bring up Diana. You use her like a shield." Harry tried to say something, but Bill was already moving. Diana was loved, truly loved, not just because of what she went through, but because of what she did. She brought cameras to landmine zones. She hugged AIDS patients when others were afraid to. She used her fame to help the forgotten. He looked Harry straight in the eyes. "What have you done with your spotlight?" Harry blinked, trying to stop the tears, but they came anyway, falling one by one as his chest started to shake. "You say she would understand," Bill said, "but would she? She fought to protect you and your brother from the media. She wanted you to have a normal life, as normal as possible. And now, here you are, throwing yourself into the exact circus she tried to escape." Harry covered his face for a second, trying to breathe. The sound of his sobs was quiet but heavy. You could hear it through the silence in the studio. No one clapped, no one moved. Even the audience looked uncomfortable watching a man completely undone. Bill's voice softened just a little, but the words still cut deep. "Would she be proud of this? The interviews, the documentaries, the book deals. You say you are protecting your children, but what if one day they ask you why you made everything so public? Why you dragged their grandparents and uncle through the mud in front of the world?" Harry could not answer. He was crying now, openly. His face was red, streaked with tears. He reached for his glass of water, but his hands were shaking too much to lift it. The cameras caught every moment, the trembling lips, the hunched shoulders, the broken look in his eyes. It was no longer about defending his choices. It was about surviving the moment, and judging by the look on Harry's face, he was barely hanging on. Bill leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, watching Harry closely. The tension in the room was thick now, like everyone was holding their breath. Then Bill asked the question that had been building the entire time. "You say you want privacy, that you are tired of the spotlight, but you signed deals with Netflix. You launched a podcast with Spotify. You are everywhere. Which is it, Harry? Do you want to be a royal or an influencer?" Harry blinked. His lips moved, but no sound came out at first. He was still catching his breath, trying to collect himself after everything that had already been said. "I never wanted fame," he finally whispered, barely audible. Bill leaned forward again, then stopped chasing it. The words hit hard. They echoed in the silent studio. There was no applause, just stunned faces in the crowd watching it all unfold. "You keep saying the press ruined your life," Bill continued, "that the media hounded your mother, that you wanted to protect your wife and kids, but look at what you are doing. Every time you get in front of a camera, it is not to promote peace or charity. It is to talk about your trauma, your family, your pain. You put everything out there and then act shocked when people respond." Harry tried to sit up straighter. He opened his mouth to speak, but Bill cut in again. "You do not get to control the narrative and then cry when people ask questions. That is not privacy, that is performance." Harry's eyes were red. His hands were trembling in his lap. He looked completely drained. "You say you just want a quiet life," Bill said, his voice steady. "Then live one. Raise your kids. Do charity work. Stay off talk shows. Stay off magazine covers. But you cannot say you want peace and then keep throwing gasoline on the fire." Harry looked at the floor. His voice cracked again as he spoke. I just wanted people to understand." Bill shook his head slightly. "People do not understand contradictions. They see actions. You say one thing and do another. That is why the sympathy is gone. That is why even your supporters are starting to step back." The camera zoomed in on Harry's face. His eyes were glassy. His shoulders were slumped. It was clear he had nothing left to say. And in that silence, the contradiction Bill had just laid bare echoed louder than anything Harry could respond. With Bill paused for a second. The air in the room had already gone heavy, but somehow it got thicker. Then he said the name that everyone knew would push this conversation even further. "Let us talk about Meghan." Harry's head snapped up, his eyes widened, his body tensed like he had just heard something he was not prepared for. "Do not bring my wife into this," he said quickly, almost like a reflex. But Bill had already started. "You brought her into it, Harry. You mentioned her in the book. You told the world how the family treated her. You included her in your story. So now she is part of it. Harry was silent. He looked down again, gripping the sides of the chair. Meghan is not just your wife, Bill continued. She is a former Hollywood actress. She understands how media works. She knows what a camera means, what a narrative means. She married into the royal family, then left it, and now both of you are doing interviews, documentaries, podcasts. This is not someone who just stumbled into the spotlight. She walked straight into it. There was a quiet rustle in the audience. People were shifting in their seats. You could feel the discomfort rising. She says the institution failed her, that it made her feel unsafe. But she also chose to sit down with Oprah, to sign media deals, to speak out over and over. So what is it? Is she a victim or is she a strategist? Harry's face was bright red now. He looked like he wanted to disappear. Stop, he said again. Softer this time, please. But Bill did not. You say she never wanted this life. But she said yes to the title. She wore the crown. She stood on the balcony. She played the part until it no longer worked for her. And now you both want the sympathy of the public, while cashing in on the brand you walked away from. Harry looked like he was holding himself together with every bit of strength he had left. His jaw was clenched. His eyes were glassy again. This is getting dark, someone in the audience whispered. The tension was so real, even the crew looked uneasy. But Bill just looked at Harry. You cannot use Meghan as a shield when things get hard and a spotlight when things are good. That is not how truth works. Harry stayed quiet. He did not blink. He just sat there, breaking a little more with every second. Harry was no longer answering questions. He was trying to breathe. His shoulders shook with each breath, his face blotchy and soaked with tears. The prince who had walked in with calm confidence was now broken, sobbing uncontrollably in front of millions. He wiped his face with his sleeve, tried to collect himself, and then whispered through the mess of emotions, I just want to protect my kids. Bill sat still for a moment, letting that sentence hang in the air. Then he leaned forward, his voice low but sharp. Then stop feeding the circus. Harry froze. You say you want to shield them from what you went through, from the press, from the noise. But you are the one bringing the noise. You invite cameras into your home. You tell stories about your family on global platforms. You are not protecting them, Harry. You are putting them on stage. The studio was dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. Bill kept going, his voice steady. William is raising his kids too, but he is not doing interviews. He is not writing books. He is not making documentaries. He is doing his job quietly, privately, like a grown-up, like a future king. Harry's hands covered his face now. The sobs were loud. His body shook under the pressure of everything collapsing at once. This, Bill said, looking straight into the camera, is what happens when no one tells you no. When you live in a world where every feeling gets a platform and no one asks if you should be feeling it in the first place. Harry tried to speak, but no words came. Just more tears. That was the final blow. A prince reduced to pieces on national television, and there was no coming back from it. Harry finally tried to stand. His legs were shaking, and for a second it looked like he might collapse right there on the stage. He grabbed the armrest for balance, his hands trembling as he tried to collect himself. His face was still wet with tears, his hair a mess, his voice gone. The studio was dead silent. No one clapped. No one moved. Everyone was just watching. Frozen, he took a shaky step toward the edge of the set. His eyes were locked on the floor. He did not look back at the host. He did not look at the crowd. All he wanted was to get out. Then, Bill turned back to the camera with one final blow. This, he said clearly, is what happens when someone raised in a bubble finally meets the real world. Harry kept moving. Slowly, head down, shoulders heavy. The prince who once carried himself with military pride now looked like a man who had been stripped of everything. He disappeared behind the curtain. The audience still said nothing. All that remained was his empty chair under the studio lights. The image burned into everyone's mind that it was not just an exit. It was the walk of shame, and it would follow him forever. Bill Maher turned back to the camera. Harry was gone. The stage was quiet. Just an empty chair sitting under the hot lights, still carrying the weight of what had just happened. He adjusted his jacket, leaned forward slightly, and spoke in a calm, clear voice. What you just saw was not bullying. It was not cruelty. It was what happens when entitlement finally meets accountability. He paused for a beat, letting the words sink in. For years, we have been told to applaud victimhood, to sympathize with anyone who says they are hurting, no matter the context. But sometimes, people are not victims. Sometimes they are just privileged individuals who made bad decisions and expect praise for being honest about it. He looked directly into the lens, his tone sharpened. This is the problem with modern media. Everyone wants attention. Everyone wants to be heard. But nobody wants to be questioned. You write a book, sign a deal, sit down for an interview, and then get upset when someone asks you the hard stuff. That is not healing. That is branding. He sat back in his chair. Prince Harry walked in here tonight hoping for sympathy. What he got was reality. And whether you love him or cannot stand him, you have to ask yourself one thing. What exactly are we rewarding when we call this courage? The camera held on Bill's face for a few seconds longer. Then it faded to black. If you thought this was intense, it is only the beginning. What just happened on that stage will have people talking for weeks. But what do you think? Was Prince Harry being honest, or was this all just another attempt to play the victim? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let us know where you stand. This conversation is far from over, and do not forget to hit that subscribe button, because here, we do not sugarcoat it. We bring you raw, unfiltered confrontations that no one else will dare to show. No softballs, no spin, just truth.